We're back. This is episode number 22 of Hitting for the Cycle. I'm Ryan Touhey. That's Ben Kruse. Sorry we missed you guys last week, but we had some busy times ahead of us. But we're back this morning. And Ben, how are you doing?
Good, man. Last week, obviously we had a little week off because of some situations. We were busy and stuff like that. A 28th birthday, which was pretty fun last weekend. So,
Belated birthday.
Thank you. Glad to be back this week with you and talk some more baseball.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to get right into the thick of things. But before we do, as always, follow Hitting for the Cycle on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at HFTCETB. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. And finally, listen to wherever you get your podcasts.
And once again, guys, this episode is presented by our sponsor, MLB Spreads. If you're getting the action and all these parlays and lines are making your head spin, well, download this free app today. This is essentially how it works. You put fantasy dollars on the over the unders. And obviously, we did during the football season. For Empty Bench Network, we had a show called Football Friday. We all essentially put $1,500 essentially on the app in terms of our competition that we did, and whoever made the most profit out of it won the overall competition. So it was really, really cool. And obviously, you don't even have to do it for football. You can do it for any types of sports. We got March Madness coming up. We got baseball, of course, coming up. If you want to hammer the under of the 79.5 for the Red Sox, you can do that as well, too. So without further ado, download the MLB Spreads app today, and you won't regret it.
Yeah, obviously the Red Sox are going to be a point of discussion in this episode. But before we get to them, we're just going to quickly summarize what's been going on. So, spring training obviously started 2 weeks ago, and some noteworthy stories going on. Both Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani homered in their spring training debuts with their new teams respectively. Obviously, Soto with the Yankees and Ohtani with the Dodgers. So it's been exciting for me as a Yankee fan to see Soto go off this spring. He's having a hell of a spring. He's already got 3 home runs, and he's showing his opposite field power to left field. So that's pretty exciting to see. His swing's a thing of beauty. And Ohtani, as we all know, has a classic left-handed swing. He went yard in his spring training debut, like I mentioned. Byron Buxton returned to play center field for the Twins for the first time in almost 2 years. He didn't really have much action out there, but it was good to see him chasing after fly balls in center for the first time in a long time. He looks mobile, and hopefully he can stay on the field. As we all know, Buxton, he's a very talented ball player, but he has had just a hard time staying on the field in recent years. Has anything stuck out to you, Ben, during spring training?
I mean, for my team specifically, there's not been a lot. It's been a lot more just drama off the field than anything. And obviously we'll kind of talk more about it, of course, with some unfortunate news that happened a couple days ago. But yeah, in terms of your Yankees, I mean, man, it's just if that's essentially a preview of what's to come for the regular season, you guys are going to be an absolute force. It sucks to admit it, of course, on my other side. But, I could give credit where credit's due. And, Juan Soto, I think, is going to be absolute, really good for you guys. And, I mean, obviously Aaron Judge is kind of off to a slow start, but, that's kind of spring training. It's more of exhibition games, just guys just kind of being healthy. Byron Buxton obviously back is key. That Twins team obviously missed him a lot last year when he was injured. So, pretty much just kind of outside of that, it's just, pretty much guys just kind of getting the work in and, leading up for now, I believe, because I think today's Thursday. So we're a couple more weeks until opening day. So can't wait.
Yeah, we got exactly 3 weeks till opening day, March 28th. So we're getting closer and closer. One guy who I forgot to mention during when it comes to the Yankees in spring training, Anthony Rizzo, starting to look good. I went to the game on Friday night last week against the Blue Jays, and he had 2 home runs, including a grand slam. So he looked really good, and that was a very good thing to see for me. I mean, obviously, we all know that Rizzo struggled from like June through the end of his season, that is, because he had post-concussion syndrome after taking a hit from Fernando Tatis Jr. to the temple. So it's good to see him getting a swing back in form. This could be Rizzo's last season as a Yankee, and this is his contract year, so he's playing for a new contract. The Yankees got a lot of guys playing for a contract after this season, so it's kind of do or die for them. And they're trying. This is a very big year for the Yankees. So obviously, these guys are trying to get themselves into shape. And it's been some positive things to see. Unfortunately, now we're going to get to a negative thing for you specifically. Let's get this going on. So a couple of days ago, some bad news came. Obviously, Lucas Giolito, the Red Sox main offseason acquisition during this offseason, he is probably going to miss this entire 2024 season. According to Peter Abraham of the Boston Globe and ESPN's Jeff Pazan, he has a partially torn UCL and flexor strain. And when you hear the three letters UCL, that typically means Tommy John surgery. And obviously, like I said, Giolito was the Red Sox biggest offseason move. And this just puts their starting rotation in an even deeper hole than it already was. Giolito, for the most part in his career, has been durable. He hasn't really had many major injury concerns other than a Tommy John surgery that he had all the way back in, I want to say, 2012.
Before he had it in high school.
Yeah, right before he started his road to the big leagues. And now here he is at 29 years old. He signed that 2-year contract with the Red Sox prior to this season. And now he's probably going to miss this entire season and most likely most of next season. The Red Sox, I think, will be lucky to even see him don a Red Sox uniform during this contract. So as a Red Sox fan, I'll let you have the floor. Just your reaction to this devastating news.
I mean, you can't make this up, Brian. I mean, the way that this offseason has been, unfortunately, a lot of it has not been good. And we found out a couple days ago that essentially, out of all the moves that we made this offseason, there wasn't a lot, but this potentially was a move that I was kind of hopeful for. Because I know for a fact that we brought in a guy, Andrew Bailey, who has fixed a lot of guys in the past in terms of pitchers. Logan Webb, for instance, he has made Logan Webb essentially in terms of their ace over in San Francisco. And yeah, just hearing that news, I, of course, found this news out at work and, pretty much ruined the rest of my workday. Not literally. But I'm just like, yeah, man, I really wasn't hopeful for the season as a whole, but if there was any type of just storyline to kind of follow, I'd be like, yeah, Lucas Giolito, for instance, we brought in last year, of course. His first half was fairly good. His second half, he went over to a couple different teams, and it wasn't as good. So I was kind of hopeful for him to come in and, maybe see if he can kind of resurrect himself kind of back to his old White Sox days. And it was going to, of course, kind of give us some innings. Of course, we lost Chris Sale to the Braves for Vaughn Grissom. He, of course, is not going to be ready for opening day. So theoretically, two of the guys that we brought in one's going to essentially miss the season, and one's not going to be ready for opening day. And then we brought in Liam Hendricks. He's not going to be ready. Michael Fulmer, he's not going to be ready. So essentially, pretty much all of the guys that we brought in are either hurt or not going to be ready. So, I mean, it's extreme disaster. I hope he's going to be okay. When you hear something like this, it's just absolute awful news. But it takes essentially us from giving us any type of hope to there's no hope at all. And obviously, we've talked about Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell for a long, long time. But if there's any team that needs essentially guys of those right now, it's the Red Sox. Because the Red Sox right now essentially are kind of constructed at this point in time like last year's pitching staff. And I don't know how that essentially happened. I was hoping that this offseason we could not get at least one pitcher, but two pitchers. And we got one pitcher, but this is essentially the reason why that the Red Sox had to at least get two, because you at least have something like this potentially happen to a guy like this, and you at least to be like, okay, at least you have somebody else that maybe can fill in. Well, now it's like you're essentially kind of back to square one, where you really just don't have a lot there for you. I mean, obviously Brian Bayo, of course, is going to be. We'll talk about Bayo in a little bit because that was at least a little bit of good news for me. But yeah, just. The way that this happened, he was talking to Giolito after his last start that he was topping all a little bit more than he has been. I don't know, maybe if that was the case, because if it's an elbow specifically, Ryan, anything really could have happened to that specific torque on his overall elbow itself. And he had a flexor strain as well too. I'm more concerned about the UCL because, man, that's really, really bad to hear. And yeah, man, it just sucks because I was excited to see him pitch, and obviously we're not going to be able to get the chance to not only see him pitch potentially this year, potentially next year, at least not a lot of the season. And if he was going to pitch this year, he might have been able to get a payday next year from potentially another team. Now, of course, we know for a fact he'll come back next year and then try to prove it again next year. So, yeah, just awful news.
Well, unfortunately for the Red Sox, like we mentioned, they may not even see Giolito pitch in their jersey, depending on his recovery process from this. And now without Giolito, who was going to be the ace of this rotation, now the Red Sox are looking at an opening day start from either Nick Pivetta, Cutter Crawford, or Brian Bello. So none of those three names are really going to stand out to you that much. That is unless they get one of the two aces still on the market, but it's already March 7th, and the two of them still don't have a team, and we don't even know if either of them will be ready for opening day. They'll need to get themselves into regular season form. Obviously, I'm talking about Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery, who we've talked about in previous episodes. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a terrible situation for Giolito. I feel so bad for the guy. You never want to see anybody get hurt, and this just really puts a damper on things to what has already been a tough offseason for the Red Sox and their fans. Obviously, we've been hearing from Red Sox fans and their players, even themselves, about how they're displeased with the lack of movement there was during this offseason. And just to have this break in the news, it's just kind of the cherry on top. Like, what else can go wrong this offseason? I know that Red Sox fans don't even want to think about what else can go wrong this offseason. But yeah, it's what
are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's what I tell myself as a baseball fan as well. What are you gonna do? So Giolito, he's hurt, and he's only one of many guys who are hurt during spring training. Justin Verlander, he's going to begin the season on the injured list for the Astros this year. I forget exactly what his problem is. I'm just going to quickly look it up here.
I think it's his shoulder, but I would have to check specifically because he didn't start the year, I believe, last year with the Mets.
Yeah,
I don't remember specifically what he had, but yeah, shoulder as our
he's got shoulder. He's got right shoulder inflammation. So yeah. I'm reading an article from ESPN, contributed by the Associated Press. Joe Espada said on Tuesday that he hasn't suffered any setbacks, but he'll need more time to be game ready. So Verlander, obviously, like you mentioned, missed the beginning of last season with the Mets. He was injured then. He's starting to show signs of age. He's 41 years old. He's put his body through a lot over the years. This is going to be, I believe, his 20th season or something like that in baseball. Something right. Like yeah, 20 years. He made his debut in 2005, so this is going to be year number 20. And all the years of throwing 95 and up are starting to catch up to him. And the Astros rotation, you look at it, it's kind of thin. Without Verlander, they got Framber Valdez, Jose Urquidy, Christian Javier. Javier and Valdez are pretty solid arms, but after them, it's Urquidy.
We got McCullers.
McCullers is coming back from Tommy John surgery, but I don't. And I'm forgetting one guy off the top of my head. They're number 4 or 5 starter.
We got Luis Garcia.
Garcia, who's also coming back from surgery. Yeah. So the Astros rotation right now is pretty thin too. So Valdez is probably going to get the opening day nod against the Yankees on March 28th in Houston. And the Astros are going to be relying a lot on him and Javier to get them some quality starts. So the Astros are kind of in a pickle right now, but Verlander most likely will come back sometime around April, I'm assuming, if everything goes according to plan and if he recovers smoothly enough. But yeah, Verlander is just, to me, it's just starting to show in his age. Like I said, 41 years old. He's put his body through a lot. And, I think you're going to see a little more of Verlander struggling to stay healthy for an entire season. I think he's going to be more injury prone, or he's going to need more rests as the years go on that he continues to play. But yeah, it's, the Astros are going to have to get a little creative with this rotation. I mean, I still think their offense is good enough to help propel them to some wins in the season. But yeah, I mean, regardless, losing a guy like Justin Verlander, a future Hall of Famer, is never ideal. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the Mets last year, he got hurt. And before they brought Verlander in for now, obviously a second time, this was kind of the rotation that they had, Ryan. This Astros team that's kind of constructed right now with the rotation. I obviously have Valdez and Javier, who are pretty serviceable. But then the next couple of guys, it's about a lot of. I mean, McCullers used to be very solid, but he's had a lot of injuries lately. So the last kind of from 3 to 5 has been pretty either injury prone or just you have kind of unknown, kind of stopgap guys. Like Urquidy can give you kind of multi innings. Garcia can kind of give you multi innings. But yeah, like you said, it's kind of thin. But if he's only going to miss about like a month or two, I think they should be fine, especially with the way that their bullpen is and their lineup is. So I'm not too concerned specifically about Verlander, especially because he's a free agent after this year. So he's going to have to be able to, give them a very good season. I think he will. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Astros, even though, like I said, even though losing Verlander is not good, I think they got enough to still be fine. I have no doubt in my mind they're going to be here for the entire year and into October. There's no doubt in my mind.
They're invincible.
They're still one of the top. They're still one of the top teams in all of baseball. They'll be here. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
And another injury. Sonny Gray, he's going to be missing opening day as well. He has a mild hamstring strain, putting his opening day start in doubt. Obviously, Gray signs with the Cardinals this offseason. The Cardinals obviously made a lot of offseason moves to bolster that starting rotation, which was absolutely dreadful last year. And the big blow to the Cardinals. And pitching was a major problem for them last year, like I mentioned. They still have Paul Goldschmidt. They still have Nolan Arenado. So their offense might be able to help pick up some slack. But, that rotation is still in question. They also brought in Lance Lynn during this offseason, but Lynn had a rocky season last year. And in my opinion, he's not that great. I mean, he's a good pitch. I think he's solid, but he's not great. So, the Cardinals, the Cardinals obviously coming off a last place finish, a very rare last place finish last year. And, they're trying to quickly, rebound and get back into contention in what is an extremely weak National League Central division. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the start that the Cardinals and their fans want, obviously. Hopefully this is nothing serious for them. Yeah, I mean, a lot of big names, in the rotations, a lot of aces already experiencing injury concerns. And, you just wonder if this is going to linger, if this is going to be a problem throughout the course of this season. So not the start that the Cardinals want.
Yeah, and this is obviously why now Scott Boras, obviously kind of going back to the Montgomery and Snell stuff. Obviously, by the way, this really sucks for Gray. Obviously that Cardinals team, like you mentioned, they've added a lot specifically to their rotation. I wouldn't really say. I mean, obviously pitcher specific. I don't really know in terms of impact pitchers. Of course, you kind of see what Lynn's kind of been in the past. Obviously, last year he went to the Dodgers, and I thought he could fix him, and he still was very. I want to say bad in practice, because I think that's a little too harsh, but he's just getting rocked consistently. Obviously, they brought in Kyle Gibson. Gibson's been kind of serviceable. Of course, he was with the Orioles. He was with the Phillies, the Twins. So he's been kind of around the block a little bit. So, I mean, they obviously brought guys in. I just don't know in terms of do those pitchers get them over the hump, right? And a guy like Montgomery, a guy like Snell, you can kind of see specifically from the past. I mean, Snell last year, Cy Young winner in the NL. Montgomery, massive, potentially their best pitcher for the Rangers in their postseason run. So the reason why I mentioned that is because Scott Boras is looking at those type of situations with these type of pitchers of, if a guy goes down, now essentially that contract, Ryan, goes up. So that's essentially why he's been licking his chops for I don't think he was praying for injuries to happen, but he was kind of weighing this out in terms of like, well, if a guy gets hurt, now there might be more teams calling.
Yep.
Fortunately, that's not kind of the way that he's been. So it's leverage at the end of the day.
Well, it is his job, and
yeah.
And he does do his job very well, even though it infuriates the fans and teams around Major League Baseball. But Boris knows what he's doing, but it doesn't mean we have to like it necessarily. But yeah, I mean, he's just looking for situations like this to increase the value of his clients. So yeah, Sonny Gray, unfortunately for the Cardinals, is going to be most likely missing opening day with a hamstring strain. Hopefully for him and the Cardinals, it's nothing too serious, and he'll be able to come back at some point later in April or May. If it is mild, then that's good at least. So hopefully it shouldn't be too big of a thing. But yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to happen throughout the course of a season. Usually, if a pitcher begins the season already experiencing signs of discomfort or an injury, I always have concern that more problems are going to arise throughout the course of the regular season. It's just never a good sign. For me. So yeah, hopefully for Gray, this is a relatively minor thing, and this does not bother him throughout the year. So Gray's going to begin the season hurt. And we're going to go to another pitcher, actually. This is not an injury news, but it's a pretty significant move. So the Philadelphia Phillies, they have extended Zack Wheeler. He gets a 3-year, $126 million contract extension. Wheeler, obviously coming off a very good season last year with the Phillies, is arguably one of the top pitchers in maybe it's not arguably, is one of the top pitchers in the National League and in baseball in general. And the Phillies, they're the strength of their success over the past couple of years, besides, their prolific offense. It's been, their 1-2 punch of Nola and Wheeler. The two of them have really delivered, especially when it comes time for the postseason. Now, obviously, they were upset in the NLCS by the Diamondbacks last year, but the two of them, but without them, the Phillies don't get anywhere near the World Series, or as far as they do. The two of them are very responsible for knocking off the Braves in the division series the past 2 seasons. So, in my opinion, this is a very good move for the Phillies. They get to keep their strength in the core of that starting rotation. Wheeler obviously is a great pitcher, like I mentioned. And $126 million, that's a lot of money for 3 years. So good for the Phillies and good for Wheeler.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, the Phillies have kind of had a really quiet offseason, but I don't really think that they had to kind of make a lot of moves specifically this offseason, because I think that roster is pretty much ready for contention once again. I mean, they have Harper, Castellanos, Real Muto. Of course, I would say the only guy that they really are losing is Rhys Hoskins. Of course, he went over to the Brewers, but he really wasn't healthy a lot of last year, and I think that they'll still be fine essentially without his production. Of course, he'll be missed for sure there, but that lineup still is really solid, and they essentially locked up on Nola and Wheeler this offseason to extension. So, I mean, as quiet essentially as you might think that it has been, these are obviously 2 massive moves for Dombrowski. Guys specifically that we used to have that paid players. But it's nice for the Phillies. I'm really happy for their fans. Of course, Wheeler is going to be a free agent this offseason, and obviously their ownership didn't want to, of course, let him potentially test the market specifically. So this is massive for them, and now they have their 1-2 punch locked up for the future.
Yeah, so he's one move that happened recently, and another move that recently happened was one that we both predicted a couple of episodes ago. I think in our first episode that we did together, Cody Bellinger, he re-signs with the Chicago Cubs. It is a 3-year, $80 million contract, and there's an opt-out option after years 1 and 2. So this is not surprising to me. We both predicted that he would go back to the Cubs, and I think, even though this is not what Bellinger was hoping for, obviously, I'm pretty sure he wanted a long-term deal. But, I think this is probably the best alternative for him if he couldn't get that long-term deal. He's got opt-out options in case, he's unhappy there. But 3 years, $80 million. Obviously, Bellinger coming off a very productive season with the Cubs last year. He batted over 300. But the biggest problem with Bellinger is that he's always been the kind of a streaky player. He'll have, 1 or 2 good years, and then he'll have 2 or 2 bad years. So, teams were kind of hesitant to pull the plug on him and to sign him. But Bellinger, he's got himself a job this year. He made his spring debut yesterday for the Cubs against the Angels. He drew a walk. So Bellinger is back with the Cubs. We'll see how it goes, but I think it's a good deal for Bellinger, personally, for him. Like I said, I'm sure it's not what he or Boris were wanting necessarily, but it's probably as good as it's going to get given how long he waited to sign with a team this offseason. And
Yeah, no, I mean, like we mentioned, pretty not surprising about this. I mean, really, I'd say like the only team that I think might have had a little interest was Toronto. But this, of course, kind of is pretty much the most, logical option for him. He had a very good year last year, and I think he's going to come back this year. And I'm not saying replicate what he did last year, but probably have a pretty solid year. And he talked about specifically at his press conference when he signed the extension that he really liked being there, and his family liked being in Chicago. And I just think that this was, of course, the most logical thing for him. And I think that Cubs team was going to be still pretty solid with that lineup. Of course, they got Swanson, they got Morel, they got Ian Happ. You bring a guy like Bellinger back into that lineup, and it should be a force for them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bellinger back with the Cubs for the 2024 season. Now, for me as a Yankee fan, it's time to discuss something that's kind of a concern. Carlos Rodon, he is not off to a good start this spring. He got rocked again yesterday against the Tampa Bay Rays. And so far this spring, and granted, it's only 2 games that he's played, 2 starts, but he has an ERA of 6.35. And his velocity is down. He's only throwing his fastball in the low 90s. He's only reaching about 92, 93 miles an hour velocity-wise. He started his outing yesterday by giving up a home run and ended it by giving up a home run. Rodon, ever since he came to the Yankees, has just had a very hard time keeping the ball in the ballpark. And like I said, the velocity has just not been there. And, obviously last year he had a ton of injury problems. But, as a Yankee fan, even though it's spring training, you can't help but be concerned. I mean, he just had a miserable first season with the Yankees. And the Yankees are, counting on him to have a bounce-back year this year. And he's arguably one of the most important guys, on the Yankees roster. And it's so important for him to be able to back up Garrett Cole in that rotation. Obviously with Cole being the Cy Young Award winner and this Yankee rotation kind of being a major question mark. I mean, Rodon is arguably the biggest question mark for the Yankees, come this season. So as a Yankee fan, for me personally, it is a big concern. I mean, obviously I want more, I want to feel much more secure with Rodon, being in this rotation. I want to have a good feeling going into his starts. But ever since he signed that contract, I've just not had that good of a feeling. And his first year could not have gone any worse. He just did everything wrong last year, from just getting injured so much to just, giving up so many home runs. And when he gives up home runs, they're nukes. Like they are bombs. And they're right down the heart of the plate, too. There's like no movement on his pitches. It's like batting practice fastballs. And I can't help but be concerned with this guy. I just bite my nails every time he takes the mound. And a lot of times, he just has a hard time, getting himself out of jams. I mean, he did it, like in his first spring training starts. But, I got to remind myself at spring training, these guys are trying to get themselves into shape. It's not necessarily so much about the results, but I would like to see some results in his case because last year was such a disaster. But, it's concerning. I'm willing to give it until I'd say late May, early June to really prove himself for this team. He really cannot afford to go on the injured list at all this season. He already did that like countless times last year, and just the way that last year went with all the injuries that he had, blowing the fans a kiss in Anaheim, getting absolutely demolished by the horrible Royals in his final start of the regular season. It's just like already Yankee fans are having concerns that this is going to be another Carl Pavano contract. And right now it certainly is going in that direction. And granted, only 1 year has gone by, but it's quickly looking like a bad contract. So Rodon, I mean, he better get his act together once it's go time this season. If I will settle for, an ERA like of 3.50 or like anywhere from like 3.5 to 3.8. I'll sign up for that. But yeah, it's not pretty to see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, on my side, I'm fine with it. But all jokes aside, I think with you guys and for the Yankees specifically, yeah, granted, like you said, it's spring training, and I'm not too concerned about it. Probably until, like you said, probably late May, early July. I do think that there's still probably a little left in the tank with him, but who knows? I mean, because you see a lot of guys go from one team to another team, and they never kind of get it together. And I'm not saying that he won't get it together, but at least for his first season, a lot of times when a team player goes from one team to another, the first season might not always work out, but usually that second year, I mean, they're kind of obviously a new off season. He also, remember, Ryan, he lost a decent amount of weight too. So he made me think, oh, well, maybe his first year he, had a ton of weight on him, this and that. No, it looked like he came in really good shape. And I think a lot of you guys were kind of hopeful that you might be able to kind of see what you kind of saw over in San Francisco with them, because when he was in San Francisco, he was pretty good. And obviously, if you're seeing kind of the results as at least right now, like you said, it's only spring training. But of course, that long ball, that can't work out in the short port in terms of you guys' plays over in Yankee Stadium. And part of me too, like his stuff off the field, it's just kind of giving like that. I mean, it's not saying that bad energy, but like they asked him yesterday, in terms of like his overall out, and he just said, well, it's just spring training. Like, yeah, like I get it, but like Yankee fans are kind of like, how would you like show up and pitch? Because like if you're going to pay this ton of money, right? We want to see results, and not only you want to pitch well, it's giving the team length, because if you're going to be their number two specifically, and you see the other guys like Schmidt and Stroman and some other guys specifically that might not give you that type of length in innings outside of a guy like Garrett Cole, you got like Rodon is somebody that you're banking on to go deep so you don't tax that pen. So not just Rodon himself, but it's the guys around him, that rotation. They're banking on him to be really, really good. And then, of course, just that contract. I mean, you look at the first couple seasons, if essentially he pitches bad another year this year, I mean, I'm not saying like you said Pavano potentially, but it could be that. I mean, because you have to just see results. And the Yankees are banking on him. And he could essentially, I'm not saying make or break that season, but that Yankees lineup is going to be a force as it is. The bullpen is going to be pretty good as it is. That rotation is the one thing that I see in there. After Garrett Cole is just like, I just don't know. And then he brought a guy like a Blake Snell. This is obviously, we've talked about Montgomery, Blake Snell a lot, but if you brought in a guy, for instance, like a Blake Snell to be their number two, then you're like, yes. Now you have a fact that Rodon being number three, it's like, okay, we could take it or leave it. He's your number two. So you're banking on him a ton. And this is essentially what you're getting as of right now. It's going to be tough. Like, especially against a team like Baltimore, like a team like Houston or Texas. It's going to be tough to go deep into the playoffs. You're just not getting production from that two pitcher.
Yeah, obviously you want to preserve those arms in the bullpen as much as you possibly can, because a lot of those arms in the Yankee bullpen have had injury history. I mean, the Yankees right now, I mean, they're already without Scott Efros and Tommy Kahnle for opening day. Kahnle obviously, was brought back last year. He began last year on the injured list, so he might as well start this year on the injured list as well. It goes hand in hand if you're a Yankee. That's just the way it is. Jonathan Loaiza has had a ton of injury history in the past. The guy can't stay healthy to save his life. So I mean, this pitching depth that the Yankees have is very minimal. It's very minimal, and like you said, there's really little to no margin for error for Rodon this season. The training wheels are off. It's time for him to really step his game up this season. And I hope to God for his sake, he has a good year. Otherwise, he's going to get booed the hell out of New York. He'll be the next. He'll be the next Joey Gallo or Aaron Hicks.
Yeah, you don't want to get that type of treatment. Let's just say that.
Yep, I mean, a couple of guys have literally gotten themselves booed out of New York, and for his sake, he better start getting his head on straight and just better find that consistency that he had in San Francisco and get back to that level. I just ever since he signed with the Yankees, I don't know what it is. I just feel like he's missing like some fire in him. I just haven't really seen it ever since he signed this contract. He hasn't really shown his emotion.
Apparently, a couple of days ago, there was a tweet I was reading that apparently he gave up like 4 home runs to like these like single A, double A guys. I'm like, of course, people are like gonna lose their minds, of course, online, be like, oh my god, this guy's over and done. But like everything just right now with him is just like he just can't get out of his own way. And I'm like, I just don't know what to think so far. I mean, it just has not been good with that.
I did like a quote that he gave though after that happened. He did say, "I'm giving them all up now, so I don't give them up during the regular season." I did like that quote. That was pretty
well. It didn't translate to the start yesterday, so
I know. Well, you know what? Get the home runs done. Get all the home runs out of the way here in spring training. Get it. Get the struggles out right now. This is the one time of year where nobody cares about your struggles. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with Rodon. Obviously, he's a big part of the Yankees season this year. And, yeah, we'll see what happens with him. We're going to move on to the Braves and Ronald Acuña Jr. Acuña should be ready for opening day, according to the Braves. Acuña has been having problems with his meniscus, apparently. But, obviously, Acuña, the reigning National League MVP coming into this season. Obviously, he's the tone setter for that Braves deadly lineup. So it's obviously important for him and the Braves that he stays healthy. And yeah, that's I'm sure a sigh of relief for both the Braves and their fans. So yeah, it looks like Acuña should be all set to go for opening day in 2024. But obviously Acuña's had injury history in the past, so you just hope that he just stays on the field as much as he can this year.
Yeah, and obviously if he's going to be ready for opening day, that's still pretty good news for the Braves. But, yeah, for Acuña specifically, he just has to rest up and heal up in terms of whatever he's battling right now. And, I think for Braves fans, even if he is out for a little bit, of course, that'd be massive. Their lineup is just so deep that, like, they could probably get away with him for, like, a couple weeks. They'd still probably be fine. But he's such an impactful back, especially with him being at the leadoff spot. That he for a fact you're going to get results with him day in, day out. And I have him specifically winning the MVP. And obviously we have, if you guys are interested in our predictions and stuff like that, Corey, shout out to you. He gave out specifically our predictions for the season, and Acuña is my MVP. So of course, I hope that he has a really good year this year with the Braves, and I think he will. But yeah, obviously, like you said, he's gonna be ready for opening day, and that Braves team is gonna be stacked and loaded like always.
You picked Acuña to be your 2024 NL MVP, huh?
I did. Yep.
I picked your boy Mookie Betts.
Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, I thought that Mookie last year had a pretty solid season last year. I don't think it wasn't as to his standards. But he's going to get a lot in front of him to pitch. Of course, him being leadoff spot in front of Freeman and Ohtani. You're a lucky man. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think Betts is due for another MVP. I mean, like I said, he came close last year, but obviously Acuña's season was just ridiculous that nobody really was going to take that away from him. So we'll see if either of us are proven correct this year. Yeah. So now we're going to move on to the American League Central and the American League West predictions for 2024. We'll start with the Central, arguably the worst division in all of baseball. And this season, in this division, it's always hit or miss. You never know, who can come up or, who's going to fall apart. So, I mean, every year it seems like there's a different division winner. There have been, the past 3 years, there have been ever since the COVID season ended after 2020. Since 2021, we've had 3 different division winners in this division. White Sox in 21, the Guardians in 22, and last year the Twins. And each of these teams, they win the division, with a win total in the low 90s or high 80s. So like I said, it's a very weak division. It can be anybody's at any time. And so the defending AL Central champions, the Twins, they obviously still have a good lineup. I mean, obviously, you still have guys like Carlos Correa and Royce Lewis in there. But that pitching, is very suspect. I mean, they just lost Sonny Gray, and Gray was a Cy Young candidate last season. So that's a big loss for them. And, I feel like when it comes to the Twins, it always boils down to pitching. They just haven't had a solid like 1 through 2 or 1 through 3 starter in that rotation, and their offense is also kind of streaky. They rely a lot on the long ball, and they got Byron Buxton coming back this year, but Buxton, as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, has had a lot of injury history. So, I'm kind of ambivalent with the Twins. There are some things that I like. There are things that I don't like about this team. Cleveland, they got a rookie manager in Stephen Vogt. Obviously, you have Jose Ramirez in there. You got Josh Naylor. But they're very thin on pitching too. They don't really have a lot of arms. I mean, they got Bieber still, if I'm not mistaken.
They do, yeah. Of course, he's kind of been in trade rumors, and he'll be a free agent this season specifically. Now, I don't think that the Guardians are probably going to be out of it by the deadline, but say if they are, he'd be a kind of a perfect pitcher that if the Guardians wanted to trade to get some value for, he could be potentially got to watch out for at the deadline. But I don't think it'll happen. I think that'll probably get moved after this season.
Yeah, I mean, based on the roster construction of the Guardians, I think at best they're like around a 500 team, something like that. I mean, that's what they were last year. Then after that, you have not after that, but you also have teams like Detroit. Obviously, Detroit's got some promising talent. They got a lot of young guys on that team. But I think they have too many guys who just aren't in their prime just yet. I think they're way too young, in my opinion, to start competing for a playoff spot. I mean, they do have a veteran manager in AJ Hinch. Hinch is a very good manager. But I think the Tigers are just too young. Then you have the Royals, who a lot of people think are going to be much better this year than they were last year. And I am one of them, too. They made a lot of wise offseason acquisitions, obviously. I mean, a couple of episodes ago, we talked about Bobby Witt Jr. being extended for a long time. They brought in some veteran guys like Michael Wacha. They added him to that rotation. I'm forgetting a couple of other guys off the top of my head. But I think the Royals are going – Seth Lugo, yeah. So I think there's definitely going to be some improvement with the Royals this season. But I still think they're at least a year or two away from really getting back to contention. And then finally, you have the disappointing White Sox coming off a disastrous 101-loss season. Their rebuild failed completely, and there's really not much hope for the White Sox this season. A lot of analysts have them finishing dead last in the Central. I am one of those people as well. I think there really isn't anything to look forward to when it comes to the White Sox. They're just a terrible team. They lost Tim Anderson in free agency, and there's just really nothing to look forward to there. So I honestly think 84 wins is kind of enough to win this division, to be honest with you. 84 to 85 wins, I think, will suffice. In terms of who I think is going to win, my money is on the Twins to repeat. I think the Twins will go 85 and 77. I think they'll win the division with that record. I'm going to say Cleveland will finish second in that division. Actually, you know what? I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm saying Minnesota wins with an 85 and 77 record. I'm going to go Detroit finishing in second. I'm going to say Detroit will go 80 and 82. I'm going to say Cleveland finishes third, 78 and 84. I'm going to say Kansas City finishes fourth at 75 and 87. And I'm going to say the White Sox will finish last at 69 and 93.
Okay, yeah. I mean, and like you said, the AL Central is very thin. Think about this, Ryan. Mm-hmm. If the Red Sox were in the AL Central last year, they would have been in the playoffs. And so, I mean, that's essentially – and the Red Sox obviously last year had a very underwhelming year last year, but it's also like, yeah, it's pretty much kind of what we could take to get in. Now, obviously, the Twins won one of their first playoff runs last year, for the first time feels like forever, and then they obviously came up short against Houston. But the Twins, I think, under Rocco Baldelli had a pretty solid year last year. I have them being my number one team. In terms of the rotation, they're 1-2. I don't even think it's awful. They got Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan obviously had a very good year last year with them. And Lopez obviously I think could be their ace specifically. I mean, he has the stuff to do it. They did lose, like you mentioned, Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda. Kenta Maeda was another guy specifically that can give them specifically some innings. And then, like you said, Buxton, of course, is coming back, but you don't know about his injuries. They have Royce Lewis, who I think is going to be a stud. I love that kid playing. He's so good. Correa, obviously. So, I mean, the Twins, I think, can kind of be able to probably get it done, like you said, for like 80, 85 wins. My number two, I'm going to say, is Cleveland. I think that even lose Terry Francona, I think that vote could probably give that team specifically right around like 80 wins. They got Bieber. They got Tristan McKenzie. They got some pitchers there that I think could probably get it done. J-Rom, of course, is a monster. Obviously, Josh and Bo Naylor. They got two Naylors in their lineup. And then, of course, Clase in their back end, one of the best closers to do it. So I think they'll do enough
last year.
What's that?
He kind of struggled, though, for the most part last year.
He does, but I think this year he's going to have a bounce back. I think just his stuff is still there that'll play. I don't know if he's been like an injury or so last year, but I think that's maybe potentially why it happened. So I have the Guardians finishing second. Then I'm going to go with the Tigers. I think the Tigers, will have a kind of a better year this year compared to last year. I mean, last year they were dreadful. Obviously moved on from Miguel Cabrera. Of course, congrats to Miggy. You know, like usual, he's one of the best to ever do it. But now they're kind of in the Riley Green rebuild type of year. They got Riley Green, of course, leading the charge. They got Spencer Torkelson. They got some players. Of course, they brought in your old friend Gio Urshela. So they have some guys that I think, that Tigers team, I just think that their rotation is very suspect. I mean, they got Tarek Skubal, of course, who's going to be their number one. They still have Casey Mize. They did bring in Kenta Maeda, so he's going to still stay in the division. But yeah, that Tigers team it's kind of there. I mean, AJ Hinch, of course, ever since he left Houston, has been kind of up and down over there in Detroit. So I have them there. I have Detroit in third place. The Royals, like you mentioned, I think take a step up. Of course, I think they're probably a couple years away, but they locked Bobby Witt Jr. up. They still have Salvador Perez. Their pitching, they brought in Lugo and Waka. So I think that their rotation will probably give them a little more length compared to the last couple of years. They had to tax their bullpen so much last year because just the inconsistencies that they had in rotation. They still have Brady Singer as well, too. So they have some guys there. Jordan Lyles, he'll probably pitch, but I think he got hurt, too. Mm-hmm. He's not very good. But, I mean, even him, last year, he gave them some starts that he was able to give them some innings. So that rotation, I think, could still be there this year, but I just think they're just a couple years away. And then the White Sox they didn't do anything. They moved on from Liam Hendricks. They still have Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez, but I think Jimenez could be dealt probably at the deadline. I don't know in terms of his overall trade value. I think they'll probably keep Robert Jr. to an extension there long term, but they're going in the wrong direction. So, I have the Twins number 1, the Guardians number 2, the Tigers number 3, the Royals number 4, and the White Sox number 5.
All right. Yeah, we just have the Guardians and the Tigers in opposite spots in the division. So we'll see where we are at the end of the season. So we move on to the AL West. The AL West obviously has been the World Series winners for the past 2 seasons, and it's been in the same state of Texas. And so for me, the American League West, I have Houston winning the division. No doubt about it in my mind. I think they are the top team in the AL West. They have dominated that division for the most part ever since they moved to the American League in 2013. And they really have just dominated that division since 2017. And, obviously, it's not the same team that they were even 2 years ago when they won the World Series in 22 with 106 wins. It's a different team. Last year, they barely won the division. It was kind of a rough season for the Astros. I mean, they only won 90 games last year. They were pushed to the brink by the eventual world champion Texas Rangers. But these are the Astros. Every year you think, okay, they're finally going to slow down. They get right back into it. And I expect this year to be no different. I expect them to be, in there. I expect them to be in the playoffs. Obviously, their biggest offseason move was bringing in Josh Hader to help solidify that bullpen. And that's a huge move. And I think that was a very good move for the Astros to bring in a guy like that. Hader has some of the nastiest stuff in baseball. And when he's on, he's virtually unhittable. So I think that was a really good move for them. The Astros obviously are getting up there in age. This is Bregman's contract year. Jose Abreu isn't exactly a spring chicken. He's in his mid to late 30s now. Obviously, you still have Jose Altuve, the face of the franchise. He's going to be an Astro till the day he retires. Jeremy Pena kind of coming off a sophomore slump of a season. Yep. He struggled last year, but you can't deny the talent that's there. The guy won ALCS and World Series MVP just 2 years ago, so you can't deny the fact that he is, a very good ball player. Obviously, Yordan Alvarez, the machine. If there's anybody who I don't want to face at any time, at any point in the game, it's I almost said Rafael Devers. He's second. Yordan Alvarez is number one. The guy just smoked. The guy just rakes everything.
He reminds me, I'm not saying of David Ortiz, but he just gives that intimidation factor at the plate. It's just like you hope that he is only going to be at the plate and nobody else on base, because more likely than not, those guys that are on base are coming home when he's at bat. That's essentially how good he is.
Yeah, and he hits bombs, and they got Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, obviously another solid, legitimate left-handed bat. Him and Alvarez were all-stars last year, and Chas McCormick's a pretty solid ball player as well. So the Astros, their lineup should have no problem scoring runs this year, like they do every year. Pitching rotation obviously is suspect, like we mentioned. No Verlander for a little bit, and obviously there was inconsistency with Valdez and Javier last year, and that 4 and 5 starter spot in the Astros rotation is kind of iffy as well. But I still think they're going to win this division. I think they'll win. I think they'll win like 95 to 97, somewhere around there, maybe 96. I think they'll come in first place. Second place, I have the defending world champion Rangers. I think they're still a very good team, even though they're not going to have Montgomery this year, most likely. They still have their pitching rotation, is their major concern. Obviously, you have Scherzer, but Scherzer is obviously no spring chicken either. He's in his 40s, and he's coming off an injury-riddled season last year. DeGrom, I think, is going to come back at some point in the summer from Tommy John surgery. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. The Ranger lineup, though, is loaded. Obviously, you got guys like Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Adolis Garcia. So I think their lineup is going to, propel them through the majority of the year. I think they are a playoff team. I think most likely they'll be fighting for a wild card spot throughout the year. I have the Rangers winning. I'll give them 89 wins. I'll say 89 and 73 this year, which I think is respectable. It's only one game worse than they were last year. I'll say the Rangers in second. In third place, I have Seattle. Seattle didn't really do too much this offseason. I honestly don't really know if they
lost. So they lost two impactful bats in that lineup. They lost Eugenio Suarez and Teoscar Hernandez. So if anything, I don't think that the Mariners are going to have a down year, but I don't think it's going to be like the last couple of years where they've been kind of that Cinderella type team. I think they're going to be kind of that team where like, okay, they're going to be in third place, and that's essentially kind of how they're going to be playing this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be treading water most of this season. So the Mariners, I'll give like 83 wins, 83-79. Fourth place, I have the Angels. Angels, obviously, no Shohei Ohtani. That's a major loss for them.
Yeah, just a little.
It's just a little bit of a loss for them.
Yeah.
They're relying on Mike Trout, who is nowhere near the same player he was during his prime. Guy has had a very hard time staying on the field over the past God knows how many years at this point.
Yep.
Trout, obviously, though, still has the power. I mean, he's proven it. But the Angels have no pitching whatsoever. And I'm not very high on the Angels at all. I have the Angels going like 68 and 94. Finishing in 4th in the division. And then lastly, the team that I have that I cannot name one single player on. And possibly their final season, and most likely their final season at the Oakland Coliseum, and is the Oakland A's, soon to probably be Las Vegas A's. And this team I have no hope for whatsoever. But I will say they'll be better than last year. I don't know how you could be possibly worse than last year. I'm saying that the A's go 57 and 105.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So for the West, for me, the 1-2 is going to be pretty much going to be the future, I'd say. I mean, because the Astros aren't going to go away. They're like Darth Vader, essentially. If you think about it in Star Wars, it's just like I'm invisible, and you're going to have to go through me, essentially, if you want to make noise. And that's what the Rangers did last year. Of course, they didn't win the division, but it came, I believe, down to that final week, and they were the team that was riding high. Remember, the Rangers essentially, that last week they were facing Seattle, and they had a chance to get to the win of the division. And I believe they had some couple key losses. Of course, Chapman, your old friend in New York, he blew a massive save against them. And the Mariners specifically, they'll be in 3rd place. But that overall series specifically really changed the fact of who won that division. So the Rangers kind of had their chance to win it last year, and they missed that opportunity. It's not happening with them. I have the Houston win again for the I don't know, like the 4th, 5th time in a year or whatever in a row. They obviously have, I'll even farther than that. But even they're gonna miss Verlander for like the first month, and they'll still win like 95 games. I'm unhealthy. Like I mentioned, Bregman's in a free agent year, so he's gonna have a monster year. Altuve obviously is locked up to an extension. They got Jordan, they got Tucker, Yonner Diaz, even their catcher was playing great last year for them. So you can hate them, but they essentially will be a force no matter how much you kind of put into it. Texas, obviously, World Series champs. They'll probably, like you mentioned, 89, 90 wins. It sounds about right. That lineup. Of course, you mentioned Seager and Simeon. Obviously, Jonah Heim, that catcher, he was really good last year, switch hitter. And Evan Carter.
I forgot to mention.
Evan Carter is going to be a massive fun storyline. And watch out for Wyatt Langford, one of their young kids that's been absolutely tearing it up. And I know, obviously, in spring, but his name's going to be popping up in that farm in the next couple of years. So not only that they have a really good team now, but their farm system is going to be really good to help them. Of course, they brought Jack Leiter, Al Leiter's son. He's been pitching over there, for their single AA team. So I have the Rangers probably in number 2. Seattle, like you mentioned, they lost a couple of their power bats, specifically in Suarez and Teoscar. They'll be kind of status quo. They lost Marco Gonzalez in that rotation. Their bullpen, I don't really know much kind of make to think of them. I'd say like 83, 84 wins with them. Of course, they sell guys like J-Rod, Ty France, J.P. Crawford. So they have some names in there. Compare the other 2 teams ahead, I just can't put them essentially kind of in that stratosphere yet. And then, of course, the Angels, they, of course, lost a guy in Shohei Ohtani. I don't know if people know him. He's maybe like the best player in baseball. But that was a massive loss with them. Mike Trout, of course, as loyal as he is, can you please go to a winning baseball team? Because you're essentially the best player in baseball when you are healthy. And I'm all for a Mike Trout resurgence type year with him. But even that, the Angels don't have the pitching to essentially work in that division. So I have them in 4th, and then the lowly A's. And I thought that the Red Sox are going to have a long year. That team specifically makes us look like all-stars. That's essentially kind of how tough it is over there. Of course, they're just hopeful at this point in time. They're not even looking at the season. They're hopeful to stay their team in Oakland. So I have Oakland finishing last.
Yeah. Every time you think your team is it can't get worse for your team, you got to remember at least you're not an A's fan.
Or Pittsburgh or Kansas. I mean, Kansas City, I think, would be better than us this year, unfortunately. But it could be worse. Could be worse.
All right, we're going to quickly move on to our final topic of this episode, and it's going to be quick because we're kind of out of time. But MLB The Show 24 unveils a female player mode called Women Pave the Way. Some people I've seen, are in favor of this. Some people I've seen are not in favor of this. For me personally, I've got no problem with women, being involved in baseball in any capacity. I think it's great. But for me personally, I think this feature is just a little forced, if you ask me. That's just the way that I feel. I know some people, feel the opposite way. I respect the way that anybody else feels about this. But yeah, I mean, if the show wants to be, I think that MLB is trying to show more realism, I think, in these video games. I don't know if I can, see some women hitting a 100-mile-an-hour fastball or something like that. And that's no knock on them. Please, I hate talking. I hate discussing topics like this. I really do. And, I do not mean to, offend anybody or whatnot. I just think this is a little forced. And you know what? I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah. I really didn't know much about this until maybe a couple hours ago. So I don't have a massive backstory on it. But obviously women in sports, like you mentioned, I hate kind of talking about this, but I will say specifically that, and I hate crossing sports, but you look at a person like Caitlin Clark right now. I mean, she is of course tearing it up, of course, not only just in women's basketball, just basketball itself. So I think that there's trying to get a little bit of women kind of getting the recognition that they should be, and deservedly so. Mm-hmm. And not only just specifically on the field, off the court, here and there, but just off it. And I think that just kind of something like this, they're just trying to have some type of sponsorship or some type of thing where they'd be we could put this in a video game here and there. But I just, like you said, I don't know if it's forced or whatever, but I just think that they have softball, they have kind of just a different way, a different type of game that they have over there. It doesn't really just do much for me specifically, but I mean, I'm all for it. I'm not saying I'm not. It just I just feel like they're just trying to kind of put some women's stuff specifically into men's sports to try to get that value up, to get the recognition they should be. That's why I kind of hate to discredit women on any type of sport specifically, but I think that's why they kind of did it. But like I said, I really didn't get much of a backstory about it until this morning. So if I kind of read more about it, maybe next week if we somehow talk more about it, I kind of know more about. But that's kind of the way I kind of think about it at the top of my head as of right now.
No, I like what you had to say. I think that was good. But we're out of time here. Thank you everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of Hitting for the Cycle. Be sure to tune in next week. And be sure, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, to follow us all on our social media platforms. You'll see them down below. On behalf of Ben Kruse, I'm Ryan Touhey. We'll see you next week.